Hi, ihr seht und hört einen Podcast von Future of Festivals, dem Branchentreffen für alle VeranstalterInnen, DienstleisterInnen, EntscheiderInnen und Auszubildende aus dem Festivalbereich. Unsere nächste Veranstaltung findet vom Mittwoch, dem 25. bis Donnerstag, dem 26. November 2026 in der Station Berlin statt. Kommt vorbei, wir freuen uns auf euch, aber jetzt erstmal viel Spaß mit der Aufnahme.
So, hi, welcome everyone. Good morning. I'm happy that at this early panel with this intense topic, some people showed up, and I hope we will have an interesting discussion. Also, I would be happy to have perspectives and questions from the audience later. We will talk about sober raves, about intoxication, about also a future of festivals without intoxications, and the problem of spiking and prevention. Danke dir. My name is Emiko Gejic. I'm part of Berlin Club Commission and I'm on the executive board and the spokesperson. We work a lot in the field, mainly of club culture, also with festivals, and drug checking and drug consumption is also a big topic for us, especially talking about safety and nightlife. And I have some very interesting speakers and perspectives with me today. We have Jördis Brankatschk, who organizes the UNYTED Festival, a festival with focus on yoga meditation, but you can also talk about that in a moment. Rüdiger Schmolke from Eclipse and Dawn Spines from Stamp Out Spiking, and she will also give us some interesting information about the prevention and the work that she does around spiking. So maybe Jördis, you can start, just present yourself, your work, and a little bit maybe about the history, how you started, and where you are today with this work.
Yeah, thank you for having me here, Emiko. Yeah, so I'm Jördis. I'm the owner, one of the owner of the UNYTED Festival. We are in Sober Free Festival, means that we don't have any alcohol selling or something like that. So we're starting in 2080 with 400 people. And of course, I'm coming from the electronic music scene. I'm based here in Berlin, and we made a lot of events with for electronic music DJs and things like that, and it was always fun, of course, but we realized really, really fast that we are built the ground for using some drugs, and and at the end we had also a personal strugglings, so that's why we realized, okay, we can't do it anymore. We can't build the ground for people to taking some drugs, and this is normal here in Berlin, and that's why we're starting the UNYTED Festival, to find something what we're looking with drugs, that we can find it within, and that's why we start the UNYTED Festival.
And you said you started with like around 400 people, now it's like up to 3,000?
Yeah, 400 people. We start with 400 people, and now we have every year 3,000 people, and we can see that it's growing. So also the audience we had around the electronic events and festivals in the past, that we realized they are coming as well to drugs-free events. And that's amazing, and I think this is what the world needs, so to find our inner peace with natural tools. So, this is what we're doing at the festival.
Yeah, there's definitely demand. Nice to hear that. Rüdiger, your experience, maybe just present yourself briefly, explain a bit about your work and your experience on working at festivals, especially about prevention and
I'll try to be briefly. Yes, well, I'm Rüdiger. I work in harm reduction-oriented drug work for about 30 years now. And I'm an early raver, let's say. In the early 90s, I spent a lot of summers, or a couple of summers, going on from festivals and festivals. I consider or would name myself a drug user as well. I'm still today. Of course, you change over the years, and you try to find your inner peace, as well. My special topic was always, finding ways to make drug consumption safer. But of course, there is a link or a bridge, because the most important maybe is to reflect your own your own drug consumption, and find or define your own goals, and find your own way, in between something, in between sober and excess. Yeah, well, so far so good, maybe.
Thank you. Dawn, please present yourself briefly and explain us a little bit about your work.
Lovely, thank you very much. So I'm Dawn Dines, the CEO and founder of Stamp Out Spiking, and I've been on a mission for the last 2 decades, so it's just over 20 years now, to try and educate and campaign, because I cannot tell you, ladies and gentlemen, how many men and women that I have had breaking down in my arms, telling me the most horrendous accounts of how people have been putting mind-rendering drugs into their system. They've taken advantage of them. This could be for sexual assault, rape, robbery, bribery, even jealousy. And this crime does not just happen to women and girls, which really annoys me. So I always say this crime just happens just as easily to men and boys as well. So my work has taken me to nearly getting the law of the land changed in England, 20 years of going through different political parties, and we're nearly there. So I'm looking forward to it today.
Thank you so much. Really important topic. So we have the level of especially educating about the risks and the topics, the safer use, also to accept that there is use, and festivals and in the rave culture and the party scene, and how to make it safer, and also offering alternative ways of coming together and celebrating and having rave culture also sober. What do you say, where we stand today in that, and how is the scene evolving around sober raves from your perspective?
What do you mean, really? So the sober, what effect?
I don't know, for example, is it you said the demand is bigger. For example, we often see that younger generations, for example, not all of them, but there is a growing trend towards consuming less alcohol, and also having more awareness structures. And I think something that grew in the past years, definitely in festivals and also in club culture, is to have certain awareness structures. First of all, for situations of abuse, but also around the whole consumption topic, because those are very sensitive spaces where people are intoxicated, but also how younger generations maybe have a higher demand or a higher interest in having sober spaces. And maybe, I don't know, do you have younger generations coming to the festival?
Definitely. You can see this, that there's more awareness for take care of yourself. So, and the younger generation is totally effect of social media and everything like that. And what's happened there, it's happened also outside. So that means that the younger generation definitely have more awareness for inner peace. And this is really what we can see at our festival, that women's and families are coming, and the ground is there for family without drugs and alcohol, and there's more a safer space to celebrate as a family together. And of course, they're growing definitely differently. So, and I'm happy about that, to be honest. I'm really happy about that,
About the spiking situation, where does the prevention stand at the moment, and how is the process going in the UK? And maybe, I don't know if you know about Germany, because here also, I don't know, do you think that there's a lot of awareness around the topic of spiking, that it is a problem, that it exists in festivals, or is it still a bit of a dark field that a lot of organizers maybe are not so much aware of?
To be honest with you, it's a really grey area, and it's something that we've been fighting for. And the more times that I get onto the television in the UK, I've been on Crime Watch and Good Morning Britain, and I've been trying to highlight again and take victims of these crimes so that people understand. And it's such a global issue that we have now been reaching out, we're sharing resources with Australia, with America, in Istanbul, in Hungary. So we're really starting to get our message across on a global scale. And funny enough, back in 1989, when I was traveling on a round the world ticket, somebody tried to spike my drink, and I caught them in the act. and his hand moved away from my glass really quickly, and all the hairs on the back of my neck went up, and I thought, he's done something to my drink. So I went to the bathroom, and I thought, when I come back, I'm going to do a James Bond thing and swap the glasses. But I didn't. I climbed through a little tiny window and ran for my life. And then years later, a friend and I got spiked in Mexico. And do you know what? Again, all the hairs on the back of my neck went up. And this is at lunchtime in a restaurant. And I said to my friend, do you know what? They've done something to our drink. So I threw the money down. We rushed out and we went back to our apartment. And as we were walking up the stairs, my legs were so heavy, we were literally helping each other in. And we were out cold for over 30 hours. So whatever drugs they put in our system, number one, it could have killed us. Number two, what could have happened, I don't know. We hear of human trafficking and, you know, there's so many different reasons that this happens. So I designed like a foil which goes over a glass just to stop an opportunist from easily being able to slip something into your drink. And then I've contacted lots of companies now, and somebody's designed this little contraption that you put in a bottle, and that will also stop. And over in America, they've designed a little scrunchie, which is can go over your drink too. And you pop that on top of a glass. So this is just some little things that can obviously help. And we found out that thousands of people are scanning the QR code, and that takes them to that all-important information. What do you do? How do you safeguard yourself? How do you collect the evidence? Because that is the only way that we're going to start seeing a change, is when we say zero tolerance on spiking, and then we can show that how many people are accessing that all-important safeguarding information. So I think, you know, globally, we're looking to share stamp out spiking. So if there's any organizations in Germany or any other country, please get in contact with us, because collaboration is key. That is the only way that we're going to stop these mind-rendering drugs being inadvertently put into their drink, into their food. And I want to really share really quickly that vapes are the newest thing in the UK, and it's something that is very social. So somebody would say, do you want to try my blueberry vape? And boom, they've got you. They're even putting it in chewing gum these days. So ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know somebody, please don't trust what they're trying to hand to you.
Thank you so much. Do you work directly always with the venues also together, or with the festival organizers?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we've just got into Reading and Leeds Festival this year. And being of an older age, sleeping in a camper van for 5 nights nearly broke my back. But it was amazing, because I had parents contacting me saying, oh, my son and my daughter's going to be there. We've told them to come by, get some resources from you. And the sort of, you know, we've had 2 national campaigns now going across the UK. So if only it was this easy to see a spiked drink. And the other one was keep an eye. So keep an eye on your friends, keep an eye on your drink, keep an eye on people being kind, you know, always buying everyone a drink. Why are they doing that? And that went up on the main stage. So lots of people had that QR code again, which took them to safety. So it was amazing for the festivals. Also, we've been at Boardmasters, which is a really young surfing sort of festival. And we've had lots of spiking incidents there. So sharing this with the venues and with the festival owners, that is the way that we're going to really make a difference.
Rüdiger, what are your main fields of work or measurements that you take to provide a safe or safer environment for drug use?
Well, like in my career, I had like different kind of posts, you know, and functions, let's say. But since I also represent this kind of German network, and there's also a European network of organizations that work on site, you know. It's like, so in German we would call them Partydrogenorganisationen, so safer nightlife organizations, basically. Most of them were founded like 10 or 20 years ago already, or even longer ago. But their specific topic was drugs, you know. But over the years, it developed a lot that almost all of the organizations also cover and educate about sexual violence, sexualized violence, you know, sexual assault. Also, spiking is a big topic for us. But maybe, you know, it differs a lot, the strategy, because we're not campaigners. Well, of course, sometimes we have like campaigns, and some partners, you know, advertise at big festivals like basic rules, let's say, you know, for being safe at a festival, you know, take care how you get home, you know, take care of your friends, drink water, rest, and all that. But also, of course, more specific hints about safer drug use and all that. And when it comes to spiking and all the other topics as well, I think our strategy is more to communicate directly. So we, set up info stands, also chill areas where people can rest a little bit and can approach us and can communicate with us. We distributed a lot of educational material, also covering spiking, for example. And it's more like, let's say, people focused, you know, directly. Like it's always basic information, but also, of course, like in case, you know, in case you think you have been you spiked, you know, or you suspect you have been spiked, what can you actually do, and where to find help, you know, and yeah, similar things about this. But I think our strategy is more like, direct communication and informal education in between or amongst the partygoers. So that's the main difference, maybe, you know, because we are not so much active on the structural level, let's say.
Around spiking especially, I've been aware of some cases that often, especially needle spiking, which is also like a kind of newer phenomenon that happened recently a lot more, that a lot of people are actually not aware of the current like threat that it brings, and that often it's not being taken very serious, or that people are not really aware of it. Is that also the experience that you have, or I don't know?
Yeah, well, luckily, you know, if we're looking at a scale on the spiking issues, we've just done some data with Cardiff University. It's the biggest data collection on spiking issues, and needle spiking is minuscule compared to drink spiking and vape spiking. Thank goodness, because obviously that comes with other issues of being frightened of HIV and stuff like that. So what we were trying to do is to see that if one person was caught with any needle, then we are going to try to start to campaign to say maybe they could be banned from every festival. So this would give us a sharp message to people to say that, you know, because that for us is the worst kind of spiking. You imagine finding out that you've been spiked. Was that needle dirty? So very, very frightening. But our data shows that over 90% of spikings happen where in a venue, so either at a festival, in a restaurant, in a bar, or in a nightclub, which is obviously quite frightening. And then also just talking about with the drugs and the festival scene, like I can't tell you how many students that I've spoken to over this past 20 years, and with drug taking, like for example, if somebody thinks that they're having a line of cocaine and somebody gives them ketamine, now, they've ingested that and snorted that drug thinking that they're going to have this certain high. Some of these students have then gone down into that K-hole. That's when they've been raped, gang raped. They're not sure if they've been filmed. And what can that young person do? They can't go to the police and say, oh, I thought I was having some cocaine, but I was given ketamine. So we've got this area now that we want to try and start working with festival users to try and say, you know, make sure you know that the person that is going to be sharing that drug with you. And it's such a difficult thing because in the UK, we're obviously so conservative. We're like, people don't take drugs, drugs are illegal. So these conversations aren't being had, which is dreadful because people do take drugs, you know. And so we have to realize that, and we have to show that if they are, then at least let's give these safety messages so that people can be safeguarded.
Can I just, add maybe, I totally agree that it is mainly a gray area. You know, we don't have like factual data that would confirm, you know, how many cases, you know, we have. Like, there is tragic cases. It happens a lot in private settings. I mean, the most of the sexual assaults are in private settings, you know. That should be more known, I think, because it's true what you mentioned, that it's, well, that spiking happens at festivals and in clubs, of course, but I think it's like less covered or less, or people are less conscious about private settings. And especially, well, now, after Corona and so on, we have much more private parties, for example. It's more common to even rave, you know, in private settings. So that's a topic for us. And also, as you said, like, in most of the cases, people suspect they have been spiked. There's a lot of fear. People need some kind of support, you know, in this situation, and need advice. That's what we focus on mainly, because what comes after, you know, going to the police, for example, is, you know, excluded for some, or it's difficult in case you decide to go there. It's a lot of psychological burden, you know, for people. Also, the substances are not easy to detect, you know, and to prove. And in many cases, and many studies also confirmed that in most of the cases, there have been no substances found, or totally other substances than the person expected, you know. And these kind of typical sedatives, you know, that you expect, are not so easy to find. Also, there is this kind of effect that in case of fear of being spiked, of course, this is a big topic, or it's easy to get into a kind of panic state, you know. And once you are convinced that there was a tricky situation, maybe it might be that you just have the idea, you know, of being spiked, and and this is such a psychological burden. It just makes more sense to focus on the person and to help them, actually, than to send them to a kind of, I don't know, clinic. Of course, if the person, you know, wish that, of course, it's the best measurement. You know, we always support the person according to their needs, of course. But yeah, there is often no solution, let's say, or no solution if you go to these kind of official institutions.
Oh, could I just add to that as well? Yeah, thank you. Like, some of the drugs that we found out that are being used in spiking incidents, the Met Police, like, another grey area, these grey areas, something I really love to, like, hit into, because like with GHB, for example, that can go out of your system as quickly as 6 hours. Now, we've got testing kits that are being put into bars across the UK. These are inadequate. They only test for a few different drugs that are being used, and it really makes my blood boil, because potentially we could be putting victims into a more vulnerable position. If they test that drink and say there's nothing wrong with it, that man or that woman could then leave the bar, go down the road. And when these date rape drugs get put into your system, you've probably got, when you start to like feel like really drunk really quickly, the first thing that happens is your vision will get blurred. Then you're gonna feel like really like an out-of-body experience. And then after that, you've got probably less than a minute to get to somebody to tell them. And you need to say to people, you know, I've been spiked, you need to protect me, because as soon as these date rape drugs get put into your system, you become compliant, you can't put up a fight, and then you're left with no memory whatsoever. And I'd just like to add on that note, when you were explaining about that the domestic spiking is huge. So, you know, gentlemen, please be aware, ladies will probably spike you to go through your wallet to get your credit cards out and to do horrible things like that. We have known women spiking other women and selling them to men. We have found out that men are spiking men, like the most prolific male rapist in history was the Sanaga case in Manchester, and he raped over 200 men. So, you know, this is going on, and I always speak to men and I say to them, you know, as a straight male, if you went out one night and you had too much to drink, if you then got anally raped, sorry to lower the tone this early in the morning, but it's the realistic side of what's happening. If you got raped, would you tell anyone? Probably 95% of men say no. So when I hear that these crimes are happening just to women and girls, I absolutely challenged that figure.
Super, super important topic, also like the complexity of that kind of assaults, how they are. And I think it also really, both of your perspectives really show how important it is also to have trained staff and awareness structures that are there to at least, I mean, you will never fully prevent those things to happen, but at least to have responsible staff that is there that people can turn to and being properly taken care of and that are aware of that kind of issues. Because I think also when about safety, in the past, safety was mainly about people getting into fights and prevent that or like excessive violence. But that kind of violence that happens with spiking, with intoxication, is very sensitive, and especially the victims are not necessarily able to fully communicate what happened to them. So I think this is super important. Also, you opened up the whole legal framework, which I think is also something we need to talk about, on how much governmental support is there, how much awareness is around that, and how we can also legally have a certain safer environment where victims can actually speak out about their situation and there's governmental support. But I would also like to go back a bit to Jördis, because I haven't spoken to you now in a bit. But yeah, I think it's also, we talk now a lot about prevention and awareness and education around those topics, and you actively open up a space giving an alternative, which I think is also really important.
Try our best.
Yeah. And yeah, just how is it received by the guests? Is it like fully, that people fully are accepting this and are really into it? Or is there also like cases of like, I mean, I'm sure you also have awareness structures. What are the challenges or the problems that maybe you face in that kind of sober environments, and how is it developing?
So, yeah, first of all, our communication about that is super clear, that we are a drug-free, alcohol-free festival. So, and I think every people who's coming to our festival have another consciousness about that, because they're coming from kind of parties with a lot of drugs and everything. So, and yesterday I had a talk with my friend and we spoke a bit about the topics we have here. And she said, oh, I don't recognize that you don't have alcohol or something like that. I say, oh, wow, this is a difference between so many other festivals, because the people are, what we are looking for when we are drinking alcohol and when we are taking some drugs, it's always the same. We want to be free, we want to be in love, we want to be in, yeah, whatever else, beautiful emotions. So, and that's why the people who are coming to the UNYTED Festival, they had all this experience of bad nights or spiking or whatever else, and they know, oh, I'm looking for different things in me, and we are looking within. What can we do with natural tools to having the same effect? And it can be happen, and really simple with the natural tools of breath and everything. But what I can also say is, we can see a switch about taking normal drugs like cocaine and something like that, to we call it in this scene plant medicine. So, and for me, it's a different, the same. Because we are looking for something from outside to take it, to feel something in inside. So, and that's okay. You are free, we are all free, and we can do whatever we want and what you like. But at the end, it's much more healthy and affect more our daily life when we find it within. And yeah, this is why the people knows what we are doing, and we never had some problems with spiking or something like that.
And do you work together also with other festivals or networks that do something similar? Is there like a communication and also maybe, I don't know, is there like a certain movement towards more sober spaces?
Definitely. So you can see that so many festivals growing at the moment with a similar idea of festivals. So, and of course we are still connect, and we are of course doing the festivals, but also concert and everything like that. And the people are so different and have really, really another consciousness to that. So for them it's enough to listen music, and they realize, oh, this affects me with the white words and with the white sound. So it's it's in ceremony all the time. So Rüdiger. Yeah.
Can I just ask back,
Of
maybe?
course, of course.
Because did you ever, came to a point? Did you ever experience like difficulties, like maybe a person was intoxicated when coming to the
Yes.
ground, or there's also, I mean, I don't want to be too philosophical, but coffee and black tea are
Everything.
drugs.
Cacao, to be honest,
and
cacao.
What's your idea or philosophy there?
We don't know what's happened in the tents in the night. So to be honest, and of course, cannabis is one of the thing at our festival. We are not totally free. I can say that. Because when we, for example, cacao, it's a really hard open plant medicine. So, and again, we're taking something from outside to feel something inside. So, but the consciousness about that is differently. For example, when they're taking mushrooms, for example, it's also a big thing in our scene, plant medicine, ayahuasca. It's all the time more microdosing. So also there is more consciousness. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I think this is really the key, is the awareness and consciousness, and also awareness about safer use in any way, if it's like microdosing, plant-based. But I think it's nice because we have really those like two perspectives of you can go completely drug-free or without intoxication, or you can have more measurements to provide a safer atmosphere and a safer space for using, and having also help and structures that you can turn to in case you don't feel well.
Yeah, then you have a different experience because you are in a setup of a ceremony, and you are taking it more really with consciousness as well. And it makes the whole thing differently, I think. I never took that, to be honest, but I heard about that.
And I would like to ask a question to like all three of you. What do you think is needed to support, in general, I mean, your work around prevention, safer use, safer measurements, awareness, and drug-free spaces from the governmental level, but also maybe in like collaborations that would be needed in like networks, frameworks, sharing resources. Where's the main pain point, and what would you like to see in the future?
Well, I suppose from our point of view at Stamp Out Spiking, what we would like to do is to join forces so that we can share resources, we can get that messaging across. And once I've finished in the UK and I've got that law changed, I mean, I'm that close now. It's in the police and crime bill. And as I've said, like the government, you know, you have to go in and make friends, and it takes years trying to get to the right person. And I just done it. I met the Home Secretary, and then boom, the change of government. I'm like, oh God. So I had to start all over again. And, you know, but a lot of that work had been done. And now I've actually got 5 cross-political parties that all agree spiking needs to be updated in law. Our law was written in 1862. So as you can tell, it's antiquated legislation, needed to be updated. So, you know, working with the government and trying to make them understand that these crimes are happening, the way that I've done it is that I've given people a platform. I've spoken to men and women. I've got them on the radio. I've got them on the TV. We've started to share across social media, which is huge. Now we're starting to work with the festivals, which is amazing because, you know, we can get to so many people that way. the parents is another good way in. Everybody's frightened for their son and daughter, so let's start speaking to the parents. And once that happens in the UK, then I'm coming for the rest of the globe, because this is really, we need this to be stopped. This is crimes that have been invisible. They've been happening under our nose for the last, well, forever. You know, if somebody tried to spike me back in 1989, you know, when I'm going in and teaching in universities, like, that's longer than most of these kids have been alive. So that makes me feel really ancient. But it's now that this is the time. And, you know, when I say collaboration, it's the easiest word to say, but it's the hardest thing to do. So by coming to being invited to and giving us a platform in places like this is absolutely amazing, because I've got the fire in my belly to fight this, and the more people that can come along with me, we're not here to vilify the nighttime economy, we're here to work together. Like, I love partying. I was out till 3 o'clock in the morning a couple of days ago because I won an award. I got a bit overexcited. I was dancing around in the corridor of the hotel with my award, and then I was like, oh no, I got to fly to Berlin in the morning. So I wasn't feeling so great then, but you know, we don't want to scare people. We don't want to say, don't go out. What we want to do is we want to say, this is happening, let's all work together so we know exactly what to do. We got a step-by-step guide how to protect that potential victim, and that we talk about it, because it's so easy to brush it under the carpet. There ain't no spiking going on around here. Like, spiking can go on anywhere. So we need people to be working collaboratively. Then we can share those messages, and then we're going to be able to safeguard.
Totally agree, of course. As far as I know from the, from the governmental level and so on, I think we need more punishment, let's say, but more clearer structures with regard to sexual assault and sexualized violence. And I think this is still a topic, and this is the broader topic we are talking about. What doesn't work is to prohibit substances. You know, it's just not going to work. And disappointingly, if this is an English word, this is the way governments are, sometimes are going. They want to get rid of drugs or so, or now we have this kind of initiative that maybe GBL or GHB will be defined as a kind of weapon or so, but this won't help, I think the broader topic is sexualized violence. There is a lot of violence, and also like, all these kind of stereotypes, male cool guys, invite younger girls to snort something they don't know about, or what you talked about. So we do a lot of workshops around this. We talk a lot with staff about this, so that people communicate more with more self-esteem. I think more conscious about their drug use, their way of going out, let's say, and to be less fearful because of clearer conversation, for example. And on, talking about on-site interventions, I'm here also as an Eclipse member. Eclipse is working like for 30 years now, almost 30 years on big festivals. If the festivals are open to our kind of, idea, it goes really good. It works really well. We are going with big teams from time to time. At very large festivals, more than 100 people, strictly volunteering there. And this is an excellent way of, spreading the word. Let's say spreading material. Talk to a lot of people and educate them and distribute material, of course. But on the structural level, regarding clubs, for example, or other areas, in Germany, we have a network of these organizations, but politicians or governments only pay for people, or tend to just pay for people that are really suffering from illness, let's say, but the prevention level, you know, is less financed, you know, much less. And also, I mean, what I really like, what fascinates me still until today is doing this kind of work because you go where people are, you know, where people live, where people go out, where people take drugs, you know, and maybe face problems as well. And this is really not financed well as well. So people have to come to drug facilities or counseling centers and so on. And for many people, I mean, maybe not the people that you, you know, invite because they are, you know, they have all the skills, you know, they have an
This is, I think,
idea and experience, you know, and they have an idea of which way they want to go. But of course, we're also dealing with a lot of people that really struggle and that could not even imagine, you know, to consume less, because their stress level is so high, their psychological burden maybe is so high. And of course, you know, this is just one part of the solution, and we need other measures as well.
Because they don't know what they can do to come out of this. And we have a worker at in our team. He was really the most of the time drunken because he had a problem with that. And he realized then after 1 week work at the festival with building some things, because we said to him before, to be honest, you can come and help us. We know you love our festival, but you can't take alcohol because it's dangerous. And at the end, he said, okay, I say yes to this. It was the hardest time, and really, he detoxed at this time a lot. But he had the ground and the base that we all, the whole team, hold this space for him. And at the end, he said, I never know before that I can be happy without that. And I think this is what we have to speak about also, because when we're going to the Fusion Festival, to be honest, for me it's legal drug taking, maybe. I don't know, but because I think there's a space, you can check your drugs if it's clean or not. So it's for me legal drug taking. It's okay, but we can also speak, hey, you don't need that.
Well, do you know what? I think those testing sites are amazing. Like, what would you want? Would you want to be, if you're going to try a drug, if you can test it and make sure it's safe, surely that's the way forward, but another grey area. But for us, trying to work with the police, for example, like in the UK, we've had some really high-profile cases where there was the Sarah Everard case where this lady got raped and murdered by a policeman. So in Britain, we had lots of people that had sort of lost faith in the police force, which was really bad because obviously, you know, the police are there to protect. So people weren't going to the police, they were coming to us and they were telling us that they'd been spiked and they'd been raped. And obviously I can't share that information. So what I'd done is I thought, how am I going to get around this? So I started contacting, like we got 42 different police forces just in the UK. So you can't go to one and get them to share everything. You have to go to each one. So I went to everyone and I requested their freedom of information data so that I could find out the extent of these spiking crimes. And they said, oh no, you can't do it like that. We record it like this. So if we all went out tonight and all of us got spiked and only I got raped, then it would, the way that the crime is recorded would show that I was raped, but it wouldn't show that I was spiked. So I was like, so how the hell do we find out the true data? In other words, it's impossible. So that's why I got the bit between my teeth and thought, right, I've got to do this. So that's why I started to change the law. Now what I've done is I've gone to the police and said, why don't you stick your messages on these things? So the police have been putting the messages on and they've been handing them out. Now, do you know what? That has turned the police around from being like this, oh, don't speak to them, to them gaining intel. People, they're gaining relationships, they're getting the trust back. And that's something that's so important to how we're going to make these crimes more easily to report.
Thank you for all of your perspectives and experiences. I wanted to open up the space a little bit also for the audience for the last 15 minutes. If there are any questions, anything you want to share, or also some perspectives, I don't know, maybe you work in a similar field, as it is a very deep and sensitive topic, but I would be happy if like any of you have a question, just raise your hand. There's a microphone. Otherwise, there's also a question that popped up in my head that I wanted to ask you, Rüdiger, because we were talking now a lot about the, like, also this legal framework, how that is complicating the work around a safer environment and safer usage, because, I mean, substances are illegal. So it is a topic that makes it dangerous for people to speak out, to report to the police, etc. And in Germany, for example, now weed got legalized. And do you think like that a more legalized substances would help, for example, to have more prevention work and more education about it? It's a there's no general answer to that, of course.
Talking about the legal framework of cannabis is complicated because it's just partly legalized, you know, at the moment, and it causes maybe more problems that it's solved in a certain way. Yes, I mean, yes. In general, yes, because I think the whole prohibitional idea, you know, is kind of crooked and messed up. You know, I mean, of course, you can understand that for some people it would work, you know, and of course we have to protect, for example, children, you know, from dangerous goods. Of course, you know, no doubts about that. But for like educated people and for in a global industry, you know, of producing drugs, you know, drugs are as important medications, you know, for the most important drugs have been well known or have been invented for medical use or purpose. So to ban them is just impossible in this kind of, you know, era we are in, at least. And yeah, and I think we have like this, all what developed over the years, like preventional measures, you know, we have a good educational system. We know a lot about drugs. We know how to teach people about, you know, using drugs. And of course, you know, it's always risky, but you can avoid risks and you can also reflect, you know, and kind of control your drug use, you know, in most of the times. But then, of course, when it comes together with, you know, a lot of psychological problems, for example, or even physical problems, then of course it is problematic itself. But however, I mean, this is a case you have to solve, you know, with your counselor, with your coach, with your medical doctor, and this is the way we want to go, you know, clearly.
So I think for us, like, again, obviously I have to talk from the UK sort of point of view. And when I get parents and grandparents and very conservative people saying to me, this is absolutely disgusting. We need to smash out the drug dealers. We need to make sure that drugs aren't ever anywhere in the globe. Where are people getting these disgusting drugs to spike people with? I'm like, from the doctor? They're like, oh, so, you know, this isn't something that these drugs can be. And for me, like with the testing kits as well, like they'll test for like Rohypnol, GHB, ketamine, like all the synthetic drugs that are now coming out and are flooding the market. Like when people say to me, oh, we need to have these testing kits put in bars, I'm like, we got new drugs coming on into the system all the time. The only way we are going to prove and be able to show what drugs go into people's system is when they're tested in a lab. So as much as we can have these brilliant conversations, it all comes down to that filthy old word, as usual, money. Who's going to pay for it? So I feel like a bit of a scarecrow situation when I turn around and say, well, how are we going to work this? Well, the police don't want to pay for it. The government don't want to pay for it. The NHS don't want to pay for it. So who is going to pay for it? So, you know, unless somebody actually invests so that we can find out exactly what drugs are on the market, what people are being spiked with, then I think is the time that we're going to see change.
Are there any questions from the audience?
Can I just add that normally I'm quite a happy-go-lucky girl. I don't mean to sound such a miserable cow. But this is just such a horrible situation that I just really want to share that spiking is happening globally, and if we can all work together, it would be great.
I have a question.
Oh, please.
As I'm also working on the topic for quite a while now, and also like in terms of like generational shifts, right? Like, for example, Generation Z, there is kind of a development, right? So that those young people, they're trying to stay away from that drugs, no? But is it still happening that also those people get spiked, or is it more or less that they like kind of find their environments and their parties and they kind of sober raves, for example, to like step away from those kind of dangerous situations?
Well, I think for us, for the young generation, they're a lot more aware now, thank goodness. And because people are talking about it, and because you're hosting it here, you know, that just goes to show that that education is key. And the more that we can train bar staff, door security on the typical signs and symptoms, like I show videos of what people look like, what they act like, so that then we can intervene. And when we've got that step-by-step guide on what needs to happen, then I think that's going to highlight it even more. And some of the young people that I speak to, because they've got a protective cover, they're like, oh, now we don't have to down our drink at the bar. We can walk around and enjoy it. And the way I get over, because I don't want to frighten people to say that spiking happens, so I say, oh, this will stop you spilling your drink. And drinks are expensive these days, so it will stop you spilling your drink. Or if it's an older generation, it will stop flies getting in your gin and tonic. So there's certain ways that I think you can communicate without putting fear into people, and which is key, because the last thing we want to do is frighten people, but the most important thing is to safeguard and make sure people are educated so that they know.
If I just may, yeah, I mean, the Gen Z, which is a good thing, is much more aware, you know, of, well, of their own issues, let's say, you know, of psychological problems, let's say, and much more open about it. Also, with all the media coverage, but also our work, let's say, there's much more education, information available and all that. It's double-sided, though, because on the other hand, all these, you know, like, let's say, panic or moralistic media coverage also, it feeds the fear of spiking as well. So, of course, there is, I mean, that is pretty sure there is a big overestimation of spiking that, well, talking about, was I possibly spiked, you know? But of course, we don't know. On the other hand, because we can just refer to well, few studies about it. So we don't know in the end. But of course, you know, it's important to say, okay, there is spiking. It also happens. It happens in areas that you don't expect it to happen. This is an important message, and well, inform yourself about it, of course. Yeah, but also don't panic, you know, and don't go out with the idea that everybody is, you know, being spiked here. So, yeah.
Yeah, I find recently really interesting in Berlin also we have a lot of new formats, especially from younger party collectives that organize their own events that are a lot focused on sober spaces, complete sober raves, alcohol-free, even sugar-free events. And
Vegan. Don't miss the vegan.
Yes, and but especially like about the substances to like really create that kind of spaces that people feel safer, but also based on community values and coming together as communities that go a bit further and also like really have their own bubbles that go a bit further than like a regular rave, which are also often including, I don't know, film screenings, a lot of performances, talk sessions, kind of spaces for I don't know, massages, rituals, or whatever. And that is like growing not only in the festival culture, where I think that part is already more established, but also it happens a lot in the club culture. Maybe, I don't know, you have some experience about that, or...
Yeah, true. It's definitely growing because the people are looking for really something different inside. And they build the ground for that. And also, of course, younger people, especially Generation Z, is coming more closer together in small groups because it's affected more in the connection community. This is a thing, what they're looking for, to be really connect. And also, of course, healthcare, it's also a big market now. And this is the change I can see, definitely, that the younger generation is more focused on self-care, healing body and everything like that. It's good. To be honest, it's good.
And
I like
also a lot of drug use, but more speaking about sedatives nowadays, benzodiazepines are more common amongst the Gen Z, for example. So, we have to tackle with more and new problems on the other hand,
It's true.
It's not
because
everybody.
social media, it's another problem.
Could I just talk a little bit quickly about the data? So the data that we've recently collected with Cardiff Uni, like last year in the UK, we had 6,500 alleged spiking incidents reported to the police. Now, when I've done my data, over 97% of victims didn't report getting spiked to the police. So we're talking like potentially over 100,000 people that got spiked in the UK last year. So when we're talking about, is this happening? It is happening. It is a global issue, and it is something that we all need to address. And I think the more that we try and sweep it under the carpet, the more that it's going to give those perpetrators a chance to be able to do something. So by any venues sticking something up on the stage, putting posters in the bathroom, just having the protective drink covers, just to, if anybody wants one, it's a way that we're all stepping forward. And for us, we've just managed to start working with Diageo, which is amazing because, the drinks industry are obviously making high profits from this. So this is what we're looking at next, maybe trying to gather that sponsorship, get that support so that together we can make sure that we're giving the men and the women across this world a fighting chance to know exactly how to protect themselves.
Data is definitely essential, and also like really, and that's why also there need to be governmental awareness about that this exists, to also fund research that can reflect on what is actually happening. One other level that I wanted to just open up briefly at the end is we had a project with the Club Commission that focuses on mental health of workers in the clubs. And I think this is also essential when we talk about drug consumption, is that also club and nightlife environment for workers, for the bar staff, the runners, and also in festivals, it's long shifts. It's a very draining and very like high demand kind of work to do. That also here a lot of consumption also happens out of the certain structures that you work in a festival or in a club. And that is also extremely damaging on a long term, and there needs also to be prevention or awareness and help structures for people who work in clubs or in festivals to be able to do that work also long term and not being completely burned out after a few years, because it also comes with working in that environment and being surrounded by that environment. So
they are all also role models for the visitors, and they're much more able to speak with them, if they observe something, and can support better the audience or the visitors, of course. Yeah, but a very important topic.
Any last question from the audience? You have amazing expertises sitting here. Take the chance. If you want to ask something or, I don't know, get in touch.
I
the
think
last 50
maybe
seconds
we should have like a secret box, like when I go and teach in schools about spiking. And I teach about safe sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So, and then, do you know what? As soon as I say that, you can see all the academics going, "Oh God!" And the little monkeys are like, "Oh, I'll get my target audience in 3 seconds of starting the lesson." And when I was at school, I used to be really shy, and I think that I always do a secret box so that they can ask any question, and then you come up and read the questions out. But if anybody does have any questions, or if anything's upset anybody here today, I'll be around at the end to have a chat, and I'll also hand out some free resources for you to be able to take away. And yeah, thank you ever so much for inviting me over.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for sharing all the expertise, and thank you.
Thank you.